almost Halloween. And like I said last week, and certainly the beginning of this week, that song is going to be played a lot these next 3 or 4 days. And, it's all, I always kind of chuckle at when certain holidays land on a Friday. Man, oh, man, oh, man. When they land on a Friday, folks are out acting and doing their thing. And Halloween's on a Friday this year. So that'll be kind of interesting. Will be interesting to see how many people take the day off tomorrow from various places of work to get their Halloween celebration started. Because I've said this for years now, and I've said it here on the show the last little bit, that I say that the holiday season starts tomorrow. The next, when you look at it from the standpoint of how much money is going to be spent over the next 90 days, 75 to 90 days, it starts tomorrow, or it's already in place in terms of people getting ready for Halloween and doing what they do. And it'll be a weekend. It's a Friday. Oh my goodness. Yeah, right, Henry. So what I can say, and I'll probably say it again tomorrow, is everybody that's out and about doing their Halloween thing, be safe. It's grown from being just kids going out with getting candy and stuff. So obviously be safe there. But it's grown to, adults doing their thing as well. But on our show today, we've got we're working through a couple of technological things this morning. But with us this morning in the 6:30 hour will be Margaret Donovan, attorney, that's going to speak about some of the, I guess you could put it this way, some of the things that the Trump administration just does not have the legal authority to do. And she's a very, very well-respected person in that space. And we'll be talking with her in the 6:30 hour. And hopefully we will have conversations with Miles Taylor, who is, and Maria McFarland. Miles is what I'll call a former Republican in some ways. He's a person that was a security analyst and really someone that spent a lot of time talking about his experiences in the Trump administration, but also with his work of late. He's got a lot to say about the executive orders. He's got a lot to say about just the way in which human rights are being trampled. But as a security expert, he will be informative. So hopefully we'll be able to have Miles on this morning along with Maria McFarland. And then candidate for Illinois, Demi Palecek, will be with us probably in the 7:30 hour. So we'll keep you guys posted. Keep you guys posted in terms of having those wonderful folks with us this morning. But right now, check this out, progressives.
Last year, China purchased $1.4 billion worth of Illinois soybeans. But since Donald Trump launched his unsuccessful trade war with China 10 months ago, those sales are gone, coming directly out of the pockets of our farmers and our rural communities. And tariffs on Canadian imports have raised the cost of fertilizer, of farm machinery, and parts by anywhere from 10 to 35%. Illinois farmers are losing anywhere from $100 to $200 per acre as soybean prices have collapsed, at one point below $10 per bushel, below break even now, below survival levels. That may not matter to folks like Donald Trump and Scott Bessent, but it sure as hell matters to the fourth-generation family farmers who are being forced to sell off their farms, their land, piece by piece. To add insult to injury, while our farmers are losing markets that took decades to build, Donald Trump is providing a $20 billion handout to Argentina. And what's Argentina doing while we're sending them your hard-earned tax dollars? Well, they dropped their export taxes on soybeans so that they can sell their soybeans to China. So whatever happened to America first? That's what we heard from Donald Trump throughout his campaign. America first. Argentina is now selling the soybeans to China that Illinois farmers used to sell. So instead of supporting Illinois farmers, Donald Trump is supporting Argentine farmers. And he's using U.S. tax dollars to do it. it's not just incompetent, it's a betrayal of the promises that he made.
And he did. I mean, it's clear. We all know that he has. First of all, we knew going in that he wasn't going to be able to have the impact and do the things that he said he was going to do this whole day on day one or week one or month one. Hell, not even in 100 days has he done the things that he has done or said that he was going to do that he has done is terrorize the country with a couple of things, specifically, as we know, with immigration, or not even immigration. It's not about immigration, but with removing people. Which criminals? How about the criminals in your family? But he's been successful in causing chaos and terror. And when you don't have plans, you kick up a bunch of dust. And by kicking up a bunch of dust, you create the distractions. And that's what the Trump administration has done. That's what Donald and his merry band of idiots have done, is that they've kicked up a lot of dust, but they've really gotten nothing done to benefit Americans. And to that end, when we look at this, the conversation that Governor Pritzker just had, it's clear that that's going to continue to be where we are. We're going to keep seeing these back and forth deals or announcements of a deal or announcements of something that might happen. And to what extent are they really benefiting the majority of Americans? Right now, we don't need these big pomp and circumstance conversations from the Trump administration around what they're trying to do in certain countries. We need an administration that's going to take care of business at home. To the governor's point, whatever happened to America first? America first to me means everyday folk. And this is where, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of revisionist because we're coming up on a year of the election. I'm going to just say this very quickly. And I know this is there's going to be folks that are going to light up the keyboard on this one. Now you see what we were saying last year and before the election and right after the election, why it was all smoke and mirrors when it came to taking care of the regular American folk, the hardworking kitchen table, quote unquote American folk. Why that was all BS, because they're not getting that whole conversation that the Republican Party was down with taking care of everyday regular middle class Americans was a bunch of BS, and 78 million people fell for it, leaned into their racism, sexism, Christian nationalism, and privilege. That's what happened. And so now we've got folks in pain, and the same people who said that we were the wrong ones, we were the stupid ones, we were the disorganized ones, all those other things, here we are. So this is one of those moments when I'm not doing a deep revisionist of the election, but I am going to point out the fact that Kamala Harris said these things. She put out a plan. She put out things that were all about helping the country. Donald's put out things that were about fear and terror. And so if there's anything, he's acted on that and been successful at it. There you go. But when it comes to the things that he said that we care about the middle class people and the groceries and all that stuff, it hasn't happened. So you all got bamboozled, and a large percentage of those people, this is what you wanted. So here you are. So what about America first? Let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Check up on health with Chris Whitting.
Addiction is a major national problem, with more than 100,000 Americans losing their lives to overdose each year. Creighton Drury is CEO of the Partnership to End Addiction, formerly the Partnership for a Drug-Free America.
The addiction crisis is touching every corner of this country. About 2/3 of Americans report being directly affected by addiction. 50 million people are struggling with substance use disorder with addiction. And so talking about it openly, honestly, and with good information is the key. We focus on providing information, education, resources, and we want to encourage everyone to learn more by going to our website, which is drugfree.org. We're also on social media at Partnership to End Addiction. We just have a plethora of resources, easy to use, but also how you can help.
Again, the web address for the Partnership to End Addiction is drugfree.org. With Checkup on Health, I'm Chris Whitting.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Welcome back to Chew's Views with Richard Chew.
All righty, guys, we are back, and it's good to be with you this morning. I have really, it's interesting, Henry, when I get a certain text messages. There's the people who are the trolls, and there are the people who I ask myself sometimes, is that a bot? I've said this before. So it's interesting to see what we get from time to time. But there you go. Let's hit them with a couple of quick Chew's Views news items. This October 30th, 2025. Well, many of you may have heard by now the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates by 1/4 of a point. The Reserve lowered the interest rates by 1/4 of a percentage point yesterday as anticipated, marking the second consecutive reduction. The central bank set its benchmark target range at 3.75% to 4% following a September rate cut. It's the Fed's first in 9 months. The move comes as policymakers seek to support a weakening labor market while balancing the risk of lingering inflationary pressures and the potential impact of tariffs. At the same time, the Fed has been constrained by the government shutdown, which has disrupted key economic data releases. I look at it like this: they're hiding that information, and they put a lot of pressure on Jerome Powell to lower the rates because they can't really do anything. I mean, the combination of the tariffs, businesses not knowing exactly how to plan, government shutdown. Let's force Powell to lower interest rates so it looks like we're bringing down the cost of buying things, but in actuality, you shouldn't have had to do this in the first place. But there we go. GM cut 1,700 jobs in the third round of layoffs in under a week. That was reported yesterday in Michigan and Ohio, just days after cutting 200 plus jobs at its tech campus near Detroit and more than 300 at a facility in Georgia. The automaker said weakening demand for electric vehicles drove the latest action, which impacted about 1,200 people at the Detroit EV plant and 550 at a battery cell plant in Ohio. GM said it would temporarily lay off 850 people at that Ohio site and another 700 at a similar factory in Tennessee. It sucks when layoffs take place in the fourth quarter of any given year. And companies have always done this because it's about having the ability to report earnings at the beginning of the new year. It's a game that they've done for years and years and years. They know where they are. So, but anyhow, I get frustrated when I see this happen year after year with companies, and we just have to, we have to work harder to push them to organize their reporting in a little bit different way. And laying off people, in the fourth quarter is just, it's always been a drag for me. But U.S. South Korea announced a new trade agreement. The United States and South Korea separately announced details of a trade agreement yesterday. Trump declaring it's pretty much finalized. South Korea said the sides had agreed to lower auto tariffs from 25% rather to 15%. It also broke down its $350 billion U.S. investment pledge, saying that $200 billion would come in cash and $150 billion in shipping and shipbuilding projects. Paramount is about to lay off 2,000 people across film and TV divisions. I told you guys this was coming. Paramount began laying off roughly 1,000 U.S. workers yesterday as part of a plan to shrink its global workforce by about 10%. The cuts, reportedly announced by CEO David Ellison, Nepo baby of his father, Larry, in a memo to employees, will eventually the number will eventually reach 2,000 and include international divisions. The first round eliminated jobs at Paramount's namesake film studio, as well as CBS, News, MTV, Nickelodeon, and BET. The changes have been anticipated since a merger with Skydance in August. They come as the entertainment giant is reportedly making a play for rival Warner Brothers Discovery. I said this was going to happen. This is how they're going to in part pay for it, to free up the capital that they need to go out and buy and consolidate. It's an old plan. For those of you who've been around long enough, this was a big part of what happened back in the 80s. A lot of mergers and acquisitions, deals that took place, laying off, lots and lots of people to go out and buy up and consolidate. And if you don't believe me, go watch the movie Wall Street. It's a good example of what's happening now. This deal, and I call him Nepo Baby, David Ellison. I saw it coming. They're doing it in a way so that they can have the money to consolidate and buy up other properties. It's that simple. But there you go. Last but not least, judge extends orders halting layoffs during the shutdown. A federal judge has indefinitely halted further layoffs of government workers during the shutdown. The U.S. District Judge Susan Ilston extended a previous order that was set to expire yesterday, saying a lawsuit claiming the job cuts are illegal is likely to be successful. The Trump administration is also facing a lawsuit brought by 25 states and the District of Columbia over funding for the SNAP program, colloquially the SNAP program, also known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is set to run out on Saturday. So there you go, guys. A couple of Choose Views news items. If you guys ever want more information on the briefs that I provide, just hit me up with an email and I can send them to you. When I put these together, just let me know and I can send you the information and more detail on what I'm, not reporting on, but at least providing you with some updates. Just always email me and say, hey, Chu, can I get more information on that topic? And I'll send you what I have in my database. So the Fed lowering interest rates by a quarter point is going to be a big topic of discussion today and tomorrow. And there's some issues with it, and we'll get into that in the next couple of days, possibly. I know that next week we're going to be spending quite a bit of time with our political candidates, folks that are running for office here locally and some of the national offices, and then a couple that are taking place in other states. So we've got a couple of guests each day next week that will talk about their candidacy for the offices that they're running for. So I look forward to having them on and being able to ask questions. And if there are if there are questions that you'd like us to ask, by all means, send an email. We'll try to get you on. I don't want to make any promises in terms of calls. We'll try to get you on next week when we have different candidates on. So be ready with your questions, and I'll do my best to get them asked. And where it's appropriate, try to get you guys on live with the candidates. So there you go. So I talked a moment ago. I just sort of mentioned this very briefly that we would be, this whole situation with border control. And when we talk with Margaret, we may be able to get into this a little bit. But two big issues right now locally with this guy, Greg Bovino. He was initially, day before yesterday, a federal judge ordered this ICE commander, Gregory Bovino, to report to her, meaning the judge, daily. The judge being U.S. District Judge Sarah Ellis, wanted him to appear in court every day to give her a report on what ICE is doing. And this is obviously because of the heightened tensions that are taking place with ICE here in Chicago and Chicagoland area. Rich Eberwein wrote a great article day before yesterday that you guys will want to check out at heartlandsignal.com. It gets in a little bit more detail. So the judge had put this out and said, dude, you need to show up. I need to see what's going on. And then yesterday, an appeals court canceled that request by the district judge. A federal Court of Appeals canceled it. So I don't know where this is going to go, and we will see and pay attention to it for now. But a federal appeals court ruled Wednesday that Border Commander Bovino does not have to appear daily in court to brief the federal judge on the latest uses of force in this operation, quote, Operation Midway Blitz. Donald Trump is such a wannabe. Everything's got to be an operation this or an operation that, because the punk didn't show up Senator Tammy Duckworth refers to him as Senator Bone Spurs. You know, it's got to be, now he's trying to make everything about, you know, sort of this, you know, great military leader that I am, and he's not. He's so not anything of the things that he's perpetrated on the folks that follow him. He's just not. And the GOP that follows him, specifically in his cabinet and the entire Republican Party, and I mean all of y'all, those of you who listen, that send me your snarky text messages and emails and all that sort of stuff, I'm talking to you. Yeah, without a doubt, I'm talking directly to you. You either got bamboozled or this is what you want. It's that simple. We know I am no longer, and I haven't for a long time. People may question where I am on certain things, but I'm consistent with this right now. You all either got bamboozled because you were too arrogant to pay attention to what really would be good for all the country, or you specifically want this. It's nothing in between. There's no like gray area in there. It's black or white. It's yay or nay, whatever you want to call it. You either got bamboozled because you were too arrogant to listen to other people, or you want this. It's that simple. So I don't just blame Trump. I know we all call him out and name call him or snark with him and all that. He's going to keep getting that smoke. And so will all the elected officials. But it's the individuals who made the decision to elect and to vote for. At the end of the day, if we live in this democracy that we live in, then it's on the people who voted. So to all of those who listen to this show or other shows that are in the progressive conversation, and even many other journalists, I shouldn't say other as though I am, as many other people who are progressive voices need to be saying this. You all made a decision to vote the way you did. Those who are the trolls that listen to and watch, it's on you. It just is. So take some responsibility now and stop whining and complaining and get up and do something. There you go. All right, we're going to take a break. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
This is a WCPT 820 Heartland Signal News Minute.
We did not break any laws whatsoever. We were participating in a well-established and effective rapid response effort to protect our neighbors and our communities from the aggressive, unlawful enforcement tactics of ICE agents.
That's Illinois State Representative and candidate for Congress Han Win, speaking to WCPT's Joan Esposito 2 days after receiving a tip
that folks in our district, in my state house district, were being abducted by ICE agents. So when we got there, we were then sandwiched in between two ICE vehicles. And at one point, one of the ICE agents came to the passenger side window, pointed a gun at my face, and then when my colleague pulled out his camera, the ICE agents quickly pull away his gun.
For WCPT 820 and Heartland Signal, I'm Andy Miles.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see mostly sunny skies here for today with a high into the upper 50s. Winds out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour, gusting as high as 20. Then for tonight, mostly cloudy skies develop a low near 43. Friday, skies become sunny, high 55 degrees. And Saturday, a slight chance for rain, cloudy, high around 52. Sunday, mostly sunny, high around 54. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 42.
What is dedication?
My daughter is biological and my son is adopted. I love them both so much. From the morning when you wake up to putting them to bed at night and every moment in between. I think a parent's job is to protect our children, but also prepare them for the world so they become good, kind human beings.
That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. It is great to be with you. And when a person starts to, I guess I'll put it this way, when you start to see them everywhere on social media and other forms of media, then you realize this person is really, really saying something that's important and incredibly relevant. And so we've got a number of great clips from our next guest, but I'm not going to embarrass her this early in the morning and play all of them. I mean, we could have a soundtrack of what this lady has been doing of late. But when I say all that, who am I speaking about? I'm speaking about an attorney with Koskoff Koskoff and Bieder, visiting clinical lecturer in law at Yale Law School, former assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Connecticut, Army veteran and former captain, Judge Advocate General Corps. Margaret Donovan, good morning, ma'am, and welcome to Choose Views on WCPT.
Good morning to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm serious when I say this, Margaret. I was going to play a couple of your latest and greatest clips of things that you said about what's going on right now. Both when it comes to ICE, the National Guard, and Donald Trump's illegality, if you will, when it comes to some of the things that this administration is doing. But rather than do that, I just thought, let's just dive into the deep end of the pool and get you on so we can start to talk about all the things that you've been really speaking to and leaning to of late. But first, let everybody know a little bit about you. I want our audience all over the country to know a little bit more about Margaret Donovan, above and beyond my introduction of you. Tell us a little bit more about you right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I'm an attorney. I'm at a plaintiff's firm in Connecticut, and people may know my firm. We do something sort of known as impact litigation. And we represent all of the Sandy Hook victims. And we recently obtained a final, the Supreme Court has this settled judgment against Alex Jones, a noted conspiracy theorist. We also obtained a landmark settlement against Remington Arms related to their advertising leading up to the shooting. And I bring that up because, sometimes people think, well, it's sort of random that these attorneys and either myself or other attorneys at my firm are so involved in this rule of law space. But actually, we've been working in the conspiracy theory world and with that demographic for years now. So truth matters, facts matter. And that's sort of the language that we've been speaking for many years. So I'm an attorney there. And then I am also a military veteran. I was a captain in the U.S. Army for 6 years. When I was a captain in the U.S. Army, I was deployed to Iraq and Syria, and I spent a lot of time in something called a strike cell. And a strike cell is basically what it sounds like. It is an operations center in a combat environment where you are prosecuting airstrikes. And so I was a lawyer in those cells, and I was giving advice to people who are in charge of deciding, who we target and who to kill and how and when to kill them. So sort of a heavy job and a tough thing to transition from. When I left the Army, I became a federal prosecutor here in Connecticut. My husband is a professor at Yale here. And I also took on a lecturer position at Yale Law School. And so I've been doing, just a lot of different efforts in the rule of law space since January 20th, 2025, because I've seen, I guess, what's happening to the country that I worked for so long, whether it was in the military or whether it was within the Department of Justice. And like I said, the firm that I'm with, I'm just lucky enough that they have been fully supportive of us pursuing these efforts, often on a pro bono basis. And so I've been welcoming the opportunities with your platform or with any other news shows, just to get out there and remind people that this isn't normal, that this is not the way that the founders wanted the country to work. And the more that we can speak out and make a record of it, the better we are all going to be for it. And I said this recently on another show, that I know it can feel like we're all screaming into the void sometimes in terms of, what is going on and why aren't the courts listening and how can the administration keep doing what it's doing? But the truth of the matter is that it's really important that we keep doing that, because as soon as we become silent, then it's kind of over. Then we've accepted our fate. And so as long as we keep creating the record, even if it's through dissenting opinions, even if it's through talking on these types of shows and just expressing ourselves and creating the record and reminding ourselves that this is not normal, I think that that is intrinsically valuable. So, I've been watching Chicago specifically because of everything that has been happening with the National Guard there. And again, as a former member of the military, it really hurts my heart to see yet again the military used as a tool, basically as a prop. And we're used to that. I would say, I was in Iraq during a presidential election year, and to some extent, most people in the military just sort of roll their eyes and shrug their shoulders like, yep, we're going to be, touted around like some political prop again during whatever election year it is. And they can usually just sort of keep their head down and stay focused on the mission. But in this particular instance, I'm getting more concerned because we have soldiers basically being pitted against American citizens, and that goes against everything that you learn when you're in the military. That goes against everything that you are taught and that you sort of learn as an American citizen, that we are not a country that wants the National Guard in our streets. We don't want checkpoints on highways. We don't want soldiers with long guns at our polling stations. That is not how this country was founded. In fact, it was specifically designed so that that would never happen, right?
Yep.
One of my currently favorite constitutional amendments, I don't know if you have your own, but the Third Amendment discusses not having troops quartered in your house during times of peace.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's a little bit silly to think about, right? That isn't really invoked now, but that sort of tells you where the framers' minds were at the founding, during the founding era, that this was something they were really worried about, was somebody using the military in a way that disrupts your everyday life. And I worry that we're getting closer and closer to that. And so that's why I think that the mobilization of people who are concerned about this issue is really important, and that we keep sort of reminding the courts, reminding our neighbors, reminding the people who are maybe looking the other way as to how unusual this is, that this is actually central to what the founding fathers wanted to avoid. This is the central concept of not living day to day with the military at your doorstep.
Listen, you clearly are, and this is a compliment, and it's one that I'm just being a little silly with. You clearly are the professor that we all need to go sit in class and learn from, and that's a compliment. I've always appreciated when we have someone like you on my show, because you have a couple of angles of how you look at this. One of them is from the very legal perspective, which is what you do. And then the other is is an experiential perspective because of what you did. But the third is just flat out, common sense. And, you clearly have embraced that. And that's when I was so excited, Margaret, about having you on. You said a couple things. I mean, obviously, to reference back to your, a little bit about your history with Sandy Hook and about guns, you've really been one of the leading voices there. But the other thing that I'm sure you're aware of now that partners up with what you just said about making a record of it and what's happening. Governor J.B. Pritzker here in Illinois just put together the Accountability Commission for that very purpose. And
Yes.
I said as soon as it was announced that the big part about this that's important is, yes, it documents it, but it also is a way currently to push back, to say we're not going to just sit around and let this happen, to your point about people kind of looking away. But give us your perspective on what the governor is doing with that and how you see it as important in this process.
I think it is immensely important to document and to have accountability. And I have said something that is probably not, the popular opinion right now, which is that when there is a new administration, I don't know if we should be going full-scale criminal prosecutions of everybody who has broken the law here. I feel like there is a place for truth and reconciliation and just establishing facts again. And I think that if we keep moving in this direction where we can't even agree on whether the sky is blue, the first step isn't prosecuting somebody for saying the sky is green. The first step is just establishing that we all agree that the sky is blue. And I feel like what Governor Pritzker is doing and any other sort of accountability projects that are taking records of what people are doing and are documenting things through witness statements and through videos and through anything like that, that is so important to maintaining the historical record. And I think you see this is a little bit of an offshoot, but I don't know if you've been following the story of the two DC January 6 prosecutors who were fired yesterday. They had filed a sentencing memo against, and again, this is another hat I wear as former DOJ. This is another thing that sort of keeps me up at night. But they had filed a sentencing memo basically describing the January 6 riots for what it was. And that is a very standard part of a sentencing memo. You describe somebody's history, and under the federal sentencing guidelines, a judge can consider literally anything from, when you were 8 years old until, what your third ex-girlfriend said about you. The judge can consider all of that. So of course your participation in the January 6 riot is relevant. Anyway, they were put on leave yesterday where they were expected to be fired. And the sentencing memo was refiled without that fact. And so what we're seeing, and again, this is sort of under the lens of we're being ruled by conspiracy theorists. Basically, that's the ruling party right now. What we're seeing is just an erasure of facts. And so when you have things like the Accountability Project, I think that that is a very apt way to sort of push back against this, and not in a way that is going to necessarily antagonize the other side the way a criminal prosecution would or something like that. Now, could that all lead that way someday? And are there certain things that have happened that I do believe require a little bit more than truth and reconciliation commissions? Yeah, probably. The Venezuela strike me as one of them. But I think that that's just really, really important to be doing those things and to be creating those records.
And I think when you first said that it might go against the grain what some people are thinking, I'll try to add some clarification to where I think a lot of people are. They want the people to be prosecuted who should be prosecuted for, and I know you're not saying that shouldn't happen, but we shouldn't just spend all of our time prosecuting. We need to rebuild what's been torn down. Part of that is going to be dragging some folks into court and saying, you got to atone for this illegal behavior. So we can walk and chew gum, to use the phrase, and that is repair and heal the country. I think part of that's going to be some folks are going to have to go to jail, or at least they're going to have to be brought in front of a judge without the interference of the federal administration. I mean, that's I think we got to do a little bit of both, but.
I think so too. I mean, there's a line that can be drawn, right? Like there are people who are victims of violent actions by federal law enforcement right now. There are people who have been killed for, being in a boat with that. So certainly there are instances, I think, particularly where there are victims involved, where there has to be justice, right? There has to be some form of justice, and these people can't be forgotten. But to your point, I think just establishing a factual record that we can all agree on, I think that's step one.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to feel like if we put all this effort in to change administrations and up and down the line, then we've got to repair some things, and we've also got to make it clear that the people who decided to get back involved in politics, like the 89 million people that didn't vote in this last federal election, that they can see that, the new folks involved are going to take care of business, and that's why I got back into, participating. Let me ask you this. We've talked a little bit about it. You touched a little bit on, these killings, these strikes, and you were, right in the hot seat, if you will, when it came to when you were in the Middle East. And now we've got this happening, yet again, strikes that are not legal. I mean, there's no other way of putting it. And sometimes we try to dance around it because we're trying to not say the wrong thing. But let's talk about that in your observation and what's wrong with it and what can be done at this point from a legal perspective.
Yeah, I think at the most foundational level, it is wrong because there's no legal justification. And when you kill somebody without legal justification, it's murder. And that's plain and simple. But there's some sort of, that for whatever reason doesn't always resonate with people. And it kind of boggles my mind that people just, I've talked to reasonable people, informed people who just sort of shrug their shoulders and say like, yeah, but drugs are bad. So, what are we going to do? And that is nuts to me that people have just accepted that. And they need to be asking themselves, what if it's a boat full of Americans trafficking drugs? What if it's somebody crossing the border in a vehicle in Del Rio, right? Are we just going to launch a hellfire at them? Like, that is not the way that we want to live.
And you've got the military chops as someone that served. So it's not just your legal acumen. It's also you serve. So you understand there's another side to this. Sorry, Margaret. I just had to throw that in.
No, totally. And that was my next point, which is that when I was in a strike cell, that is a very grave and serious and sober assignment. That is not something that you take lightly. And what I see is somebody like Secretary of Defense Hegseth, who does not have that experience, right? He did not deploy in an environment that utilized airstrikes the way that we do now, right? I think his deployment was the first sort of invasion, post-2003 invasion of Iraq, and that just wasn't as common as it is now. And so it is a very serious task, and it is one that you can't just, glorify through YouTube videos or your ex posts of strikes and saying, isn't this cool? Because it's not cool. It's death. It's something very serious. And it's something that in Iraq and Syria, we had a baseline legal authorization to be there. And we can get into the sort of the particulars of that. But the upshot is that there was congressional authorization. There was international legal authority to be there. The Iraqis, at least when I was deployed there in 2016, had actually invited the United States to be in their country and to help them defeat the Islamic State. So we had any number of legal authorizations to be there. We don't have that in Venezuela. You don't have that sort of groundwork, or in the Pacific or wherever we're executing these strikes. So it's just disappointing. And that's what bothers me sort of at a core level, is that you have people just flippantly authorizing airstrikes and posting them on X and thinking, hey, that's cool. Did you see that blow up? These are people's lives. And it's more than just people's lives. It's actually the reputation of the United States. And that's, I think, bothers me probably just as much, is that you have soldiers, junior soldiers, who may be doing sort of mundane tasks in these strike cells or prosecuting these strikes that are almost being normalized to this. And you should not normalize those types of operations. That is a very serious task. And it is one that the only reason why the United States can do it is because we can say we follow the law of armed conflict, we follow our rules of engagement, and we have ironclad legal authorization to be doing what we're doing.
It's interesting that the conversations that are out there, and you talk about the people who, look at some of these videos or some of these posts and, they think it's cool. There's a large part of America right now, and I know that you know this, Margaret, and this gets into kind of my assessment of a lot of what's happening, whether it be, this commander that's was asked to appear every day here in Chicago, to that being pulled back, wherever on the scale it is. I think that for me, oftentimes it comes back to where is the common sense in what's happening or not happening. So I'll put it to you this way. There's a lot of people in America that are just saying, no, I don't agree. I'm not going to be nice and play nice with these people who voted to cause me and my fellow Americans harm. So no, this whole thing around we need to be rational with them is kind of delusional, because they don't understand rational thinking. And so they need to be put in their place to let it be known that your ideology, your thought process, your meanness, your cravenness was wrong. It was harmful, and it may have been in some cases illegal. I think that that's a big part of what America, because, let's just be honest with each other. MAGA is clearly, they don't give a darn about the other side surviving. And so that's where I think it gets tough for a lot of people to hear folks like you and me talk about this and try to be rational about it. Because there's a lot of folks out there that are saying, oh, hell no. No, I'm not going to be that way because they tried to harm me. And do you know what I mean?
It's a feeling of helplessness. And I will say, when you deal with conspiracy theorists, you can't rationalize with them, right? You can say, you can disprove every theory that they send you, but nothing will change their mind because it's not about the truth. It's about doing whatever they can do to maintain their core values. And so that's sort of the struggle with arguing with conspiracy theorists, many of whom make up it's a significant demographic of MAGA. I would say, we need to have faith in America. I know it sounds like a cliche, but we need to have faith in the system. And I think on the lines of common sense, a lot of what we've seen out of the Supreme Court is disappointing, of course. But it seems to be a Supreme Court who thinks that the America that was envisioned by the founders still exists, that there is an honest person in the White House, and that if that person acts outside of his authority, then Congress, established by Article 1 of the Constitution, Congress will step in and correct that through impeachment. That's not happening. And so to me, I think what we have to do is fix the individuals who are responsible for wielding Article 1 power. We need to vote people into office who are actually going to perform that check and balance. And I get that this is difficult to hear when it's so long until the midterms and it's so long until a presidential election, and it feels like, how are we going to make it there? But that is the only way that we can right this ship. I think we need to actually balance the powers. We need to balance the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. And the only way to do the one thing that's out of balance quite extremely right now, and you can certainly make the argument for the judiciary, at least at the Supreme Court level, but I think at sort of the everyday level, the way that people can affect change the most is by correcting the imbalance, by correcting Congress, because Congress is not present and the country was not designed to operate on two branches of government. So to me, that is sort of having faith in the rule of law and understanding that there is a way to fix what's going on. And the way to fix it is to get the people out who are not doing anything and who are not performing their functions under Article 1 of the Constitution.
And that's the big, deep breath that a lot of people, I can tell you, don't know if they can take. And that, to your point about the certain element of helplessness, or what do we do? So I want to come back to something that I talked about this earlier in the week, and whether you caught it or not, I'll just share it with you real quickly in the limited amount of time that we have, which means that we have to have you back. Because good Lord,
I would love to.
Yeah, we have to have you back, because I know a lot of people that I've got so many messages or like questions people want me to ask you. So let's make the commitment right now that you're going to be back sooner than later, because there's so much to talk about, and people love it when we have your kind of voice on our show, because they want more detail, they want more data. So just know that we're gonna do this a few more times. That being said, Margaret. That being said, is there a place, how do I want to phrase this? So when people are thinking about this midterm, and when we have, let's say that more rational minds, Democrats and independents, take back the House of Representatives initially, and hopefully the Senate, and we start to go down this path of making people hold responsibility for what they did, i.e. hearings, what happens when they say, I ain't going to show up? And the president says, I don't have to because I don't have to. I mean, I foresee that could be a reality. We've got 220 Democrats in the House of Representatives, and they start calling hearings. And we've got 52 senators that are Democrats, and they say, you all need to come in. And they say, no, I'm not doing it because the president says I don't have to do it. What happens then? And I know we got a short amount of time. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that tees it up for a Supreme Court here decision. And I know that everybody may not agree with me here, but I actually do think that the Supreme Court would recognize something like the power of Congress, because that is what they have envisioned. I think that's what I'm reading from their rulings, that they think that there is a functional Congress. And even if there's not, that's not for the Supreme Court to determine. That's for the people to vote in. And if the people don't vote in an active legislator, then I guess that's what the people want. And who is the Supreme Court to sort of dictate that? And so I actually think that if you had a legislator functioning as it is intended, and you had either the president or others of the executive branch getting impeached or violating subpoenas, I actually do think the Supreme Court would honor that. And I also want to leave, I know we only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to leave a little sort of note of hope on the National Guard deployments right now. I don't know how closely you've been following this. I was just listening to you talk about the Bovino saga that it is. But the Supreme Court last night actually ordered additional briefing on the Seventh Circuit.
I saw that. Yeah, they did.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, they did. And which is, I guess it's a good thing based on where we are.
It's a great, I mean, I think it's a really good sign. I almost said great. I'm going to say good. It was a good sign. And it was encouraging because not only was there additional briefing, which means that the Supreme Court does not buy on this particular matter, right, of whether or not the president had used regular forces. That means that the Supreme Court probably didn't have votes on the other justifications that the administration put forward. So they're looking at now this sort of third line of argument. And also, the briefing was set out for over a week. So the government and the petitioners have, the government and Illinois have, I think now a week and maybe 10 days and some change to brief this and respond. And that indicates to me that the Supreme Court does not think there's an emergency here.
They're looking, and they're also, I think they're looking for, I always say this in terms of an off-ramp, they're looking for an off-ramp on this one. Because this is where common sense comes in, as much as it's about jurisprudence. They're looking for a way to go, this doesn't make any sense. So we've got to find a legal way to handle the decision that we're going to make on this. Am I right, or am I close in the ballpark?
Yes. Yeah, precisely. I think that they're looking for a way to analyze the statute, which is something that they view is what they can do, right? And maybe they don't have to get into the facts of whether or not Chicago was actually out of control violent, which we all know is untrue. But the Supreme Court at least doesn't have to sort of state an opinion on that. They can just say, hey, we've read the statute and the legislative history around it, and we just don't think the executive branch has done what they were supposed to do here. And I think that's their out. I think that's their out off ramp where they don't have to actually criticize Trump. Now, there's an entire other episode we could talk about why it is completely appropriate to criticize what Trump is doing. And we've never seen a president treat American cities as the enemy. But you know, we got to sort of find these small bright points. And I actually thought that was a really good indicator and a reason to hope that this could end out on the right side of things for Chicago and for the other cities that are litigating this.
I knew I was going to be talking with you about this, and I had to get my legal chops up a little bit. So I knew I was looking to that, and I saw that it did happen with regard to the Supreme Court and the National Guard in Chicago. Margaret Donovan, real quickly, how can folks find you? We're going to have you back sooner than later, so just prepare yourself. But how can folks find you if they want to listen to whatever you're doing?
I would love that. So you can find my email on my Yale address or on my Yale website, and then my firm, Koskoff Koskoff and Bieder. If you just Google, the Alex Jones defamation firm, you'll find us. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us, Margaret. Have a great, safe day, and we'll get something to set up so we can talk again real soon. That sound great?
Yes. Great. Yeah, you too. All right. Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. All right, guys, we got to take a quick break. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago, WARR 1520 AM, and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Stop your grinding with Brooks Night Guard. Are you waking up in the morning with a sore jaw, headaches, ringing in your ears, all because you're grinding and clenching your teeth at night? That's exactly what was going on with me. I ended up going to a dentist, and he wants to charge over $600 for a night guard. That's when I found the Brooks Night Guard. You mold it at home to the top or bottom teeth. Other mouth guards go all the way to the back, which allows the back teeth to touch. This is where most of the grinding and clenching occurs. The Brooks Night Guard redirects the bite force away from the back teeth, reducing jaw pain while still protecting the teeth. This unique design is what makes Brooks Night Guard different from all other traditional grind guards. Order your Brooks Night Guard today and get 10% off plus free shipping. Go to brooksnightguard.com and enter the code BROOKS91. That's BRUX91. Stop your grinding with Brooks Night Guard.
Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix and boom, you're missing a part. But it's okay, because whatever it is, it's on eBay, and it's guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love.
AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. President Trump is describing his meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping as a success, saying he would cut tariffs on China from 57% to 47%. Meanwhile, China has agreed to allow the export of rare earth elements and to start buying American soybeans. On social media, Trump wrote that the Pentagon will start testing nuclear weapons, saying it would be on an equal basis with Russia and China. The Kremlin pointed out that a global nuclear test ban is still in place, but warned that Russia would resume testing if any other country does. AP correspondent Karen Shamas reports on the destruction caused in Hurricane Melissa's wake.
People across the Northern Caribbean are digging out from the destruction caused by Hurricane Melissa as deaths from the storm have climbed. Emergency relief flights began landing at Jamaica's main international airport as crews worked to reach communities still isolated after they were directly hit by the Category 5 storm. Dennis Zulu, the UN resident coordinator in Jamaica, said,
"What we are seeing in preliminary assessments is a country that's been devastated to levels never seen before."
Catastrophic flooding occurred in Haiti, where dozens were dead or missing. Eastern Cuba had blown off roofs, downed power lines and crop damage. Hurricane conditions were forecast to continue in the Bahamas into the morning and were expected to affect Bermuda later on Thursday as the storm passes. I'm Karen Shamas.
In France, 5 more people were arrested overnight in the Louvre crown jewels heist, including a man identified by DNA as one of the suspected robbers. And in the Netherlands, the far-right Party for Freedom, led by anti-Islam lawmaker Geert Wilders, and the centrist D66 were tied with nearly all votes counted in the Dutch general election. This is AP News. AP correspondent Julie Walker reports on what to expect in New York City on Election Day next Tuesday.
The nation's biggest city will pick its next mayor. Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani, a state assembly member, is up against Democratic former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is running as an independent. He has the support of the city's Democratic mayor, Eric Adams, who dropped out of the race. Trailing behind in the heavily blue city within the blue state is Republican Curtis Sliwa. The 34-year-old Mamdani won the Democratic primary. He's come to symbolize the more youthful, progressive wing of the party. Trump delights in linking him and his far-left policies to communism, threatening to pull federal funding from the city if he wins. Cuomo, at 67, is seen by many as the traditional political establishment. Julie Walker, New York.
And I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see mostly sunny skies here for today with a high into the upper 50s. Winds out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour, gusting as high as 20. Then for tonight, mostly cloudy skies develop below near 43. Friday, skies become sunny, high 55 degrees. And Saturday, a slight chance for rain, cloudy, high around 52. Sunday, mostly sunny, high around 54. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 41.
Save big on everything for your next project when you shop at Menards. Dynaglow vent-free infrared wall heaters are perfect for supplying indoor supplemental heating. They work with either liquid propane or natural gas and require no electricity to operate, making them perfect for garages, basements, and power outages. View our entire selection of Dynaglow heaters on Menards.com. Plus, you can check our weekly flyer for all the great deals happening this week.
Save big money at Menards.
Because facts matter. You are listening to WCPT 820.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Hey, guys, welcome back to the show. Thank you for being with us this morning. I just want to say this right out of the gate. I got so many, and you guys are still texting me, and I appreciate that. So many texts with questions and comments and observations and thumbs up and some thumbs down with Margaret. Not Margaret per se, but just, the conversation. Let me just say this very clearly. We're going to have her back, okay? There's a lot to cover, and she clearly has the legal experience, the military experience, and just as a private citizen, what's going on. And so my apology is I wasn't able to get to the things that you guys were sending me and are still sending me. So I just want to kind of give a blanket apology. I said to Henry, he's like, oh, my God, I want to give a blanket apology to you guys that I wasn't able to get to everything in that short period of time that we had. I promise you I will look at each and every one of the text messages and then formulate some thoughts and conversation around the next time we have her on. So you have that commitment from me. We just didn't have enough time. And here we go with our next guest, where I don't want the same thing to happen to us. But today is a little bit of a let's open up the can of worms on what's happening right now when it comes to defiance and pushing back, and letting this carnage group of people know that we're fighting. And with us this morning are two other people that have really sort of drawn a line in the sand of late to talk about the fact that what's going on is just beyond unacceptable. It's just, I used the word earlier, I used common sense. It's just flat out wrong. So with us this morning is Miles Taylor, security expert. You guys heard me play a clip of Miles a couple of weeks ago about the young bigots of the GOP and that text thread that got released. Miles is also going to be with us as CEO Maria McFarland Sanchez-Moreno. Both are experts in this space of what I'll call defiance and pushing back and letting people know that right now these executive orders, these bringing ICE into cities and bringing a sense of uncertainty is just unnecessary, uncalled for, and extraordinarily dangerous. So welcome, Miles and Maria, to Choose Views on WCPT.
It's great to be with you.
Good to be with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both for being with us this morning. I know we had to move some chess pieces around to make it happen, but I appreciate you guys being with us. And I'll start with you, Miles. Your background is one that a lot of people didn't know about, but in the last couple of years have really become very, very much aware of. Tell our audience a little bit about your background, and then Maria, why don't you pick up the baton right after that to share a little bit about your background, so that our audience has a little bit better understanding of who both of you guys are.
Yeah, well, appreciate you having me, Richard. I mean, I'll take folks back in time to the first Trump administration. I was one of those folks, lifelong Republican, that went into the first Trump administration hoping that we could steady the ship. And it was clear that the guy was at best unstable and at worst completely and woefully unfit for office. And everyone in the Republican Party knew that. And I went into the Department of Homeland Security with John Kelly, and over time, it became clear that our efforts to keep the president from doing things that were illegal or unconstitutional, they worked at first, but then they started to fail. And by year 2 of the administration, I was chief of staff at the Department of Homeland Security, and it was clear to me that things were getting past the goal, really scary things like family separation. And so I wrote an opinion piece from inside the administration sounding the alarm about how the cabinet, the president's cabinet, felt about his leadership. And I published that anonymous op-ed in the New York Times because I felt like if the president's own cabinet was saying privately that he was unfit for office, the American people needed to know that, because they're the ones that decide whether to fire or rehire a president. And then eventually I quit the administration in protest, unmasked myself, and spent 2020 campaigning against him and trying to warn people what the second Trump administration would look like. And then I did the same thing, Richard, in the lead up to 2024, because my big worry was that the American people, despite all the turbulence of the first Trump administration, did not realize how bad things would get in a second administration, because that was the plan on the inside, was to save the most egregious and the most extraordinary actions for a second term. And now we know what that looks like. And that's one of the reasons we've launched this effort, which we can talk about. I'll flip the microphone to Maria, but it's why we've launched defiance.org, is to start figuring out how to push back against this flurry of executive actions that are quite clearly unlawful.
Maria, take it away.
Thanks so much. So
this sort of effort, Defiance.org, and the work that so many people and groups are doing to just speak up, to not let themselves be intimidated, is absolutely the right thing and is essential right now, because I know from personal experience how this plays out. So I grew up in Peru. My dad was American, my mom Peruvian, and I was there at a time of autocracy and corruption. We had a president, Fujimori, who took over. He was elected, but over time he just destroyed democratic institutions from within, very gradually, until at the end, all we had was basically a mafia in power, right? A really criminal organization that was using the government for profit and controlling everybody through extortion, through fear, or through bribes, rewards. I ended up coming to the U.S. for law school and building a career mostly in human rights. And I've seen this happen over and over in other countries, right? This is how you end up with dictatorship or losing democracy in modern days. It's not the military showing up at the presidential palace. It's this gradual erosion from within, and that's what we're seeing happening here. And so for many people, it might not feel like you're losing democracy because you still have this veneer of elections and you still have courts issuing decisions and you still have a Congress. But the principles underneath all of that are what really makes a democracy, like free and fair elections, effective checks on power, the rule of law are being damaged. And so I'm delighted now as CEO of Represent Us, which is an organization that has been working for years for U.S. government accountable to the people, to also be partnering with Miles, who has done such tremendous work standing up to this kind of overreach and abuse, which is not a partisan issue. It's an American issue.
There's no question about that, and thanks to you both for the organizations. Miles, you're a Midwesterner. You were originally from LaPorte, Indiana, kind of a neighboring city of where you and I haunt from a region of the Midwest in terms of northwestern Indiana and southwestern Michigan, and you went on to do some really just big things with previous administrations. But in the same breath, you've also recognized the fault line got bigger, and you did try to warn many people with a lot of your writing, with a lot of your commentary, but you became the target in April of Trump's executive order to open an investigation into you, and this does reek of what Maria just talked about in terms of the things that were happening, or versions of this happening in Peru. Talk a little bit about what that's been like and how you've been able to move forward with that.
Yeah. First I will say, Richard, we need to make sure that in the future, LaPorte is always in the same breath as Chicago, right? Similar city, similar size. We should always say Chicago, Illinois, and its sister city, LaPorte, Indiana. So we're going to make LaPorte great again, and it starts here and it starts now.
Hey, Maria, have you ever been to LaPorte yet?
I mean, who hasn't?
This is all a Trojan horse tourism ad for LaPorte, Indiana, the Maple City. Well, I mean, Richard, joking aside, look, I will say this. I knew that when Trump came back, he would come after me, because part of my warning for 7 years was that if he was reelected to a second term, Donald Trump would abuse his powers for revenge. And then, true to form, on April 9th of this year, he proved my point, as he always does. And he issued an executive order in the Oval Office directing his agencies to investigate me for, in his words, treason, which is the highest crime envisioned by the Constitution, a crime punishable by death. What was my crime? My crime was criticizing the president. And with that order, he effectively criminalized criticism in this country. He showed it's as easy as a signature on a piece of paper for him to open an investigation into a critic for First Amendment protected speech. Now, no one has to have sympathy for me, but the reason I've been out here talking about the consequences is I want people to understand that it doesn't have to do with just me, that what has happened to us could happen to any American, and indeed has happened to thousands, tens of thousands of Americans. And what has happened by being added to the president's blacklist is it cost me my job. The business and the 50 people who depended on me for their paychecks was decimated in the wake of that executive order. It's resulted in death threats against myself, my wife, our 1-year-old baby, our friends and family members, including ones back there in the Midwest. It's resulted in all sorts of uncertainty in our social circles, among our family, and of course the extraordinary legal headache it becomes to defend yourself once something like this happens. And that's just the starting point. And again, the government hasn't even charged me with anything. That's just what happens when you get added to the president's blacklist. So one of the reasons that we decided to launch Defiance.org is in the wake of that, Richard, I have this multi-month experience of what it's like to be in those crosshairs, to see where there are good support networks, where there's not good support networks. But more important than all of that, I had thousands of people ask me, what can I do? Mm-hmm. And not just to help out me and my family, but what can I do to push back against this? And I get pretty frustrated that there wasn't just a central place people could go who want to support an array of extraordinary organizations. And so we launched Defiance.org to answer the question, what can I do? And extraordinary groups like Maria's represent us, are the types of groups that we will be backing as a group. And any American can join this. And we are going to crowdfund the most extraordinary efforts around the country to push back against presidential revenge and give people options, new options every month on how to stay involved in the fight.
It's so great, you guys. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu, and we're talking this morning with Miles Taylor and Maria McFarland Sanchez-Moreno. Maria, you, as someone that takes a position that human rights are hugely at risk right now, what is some of your observations as a citizen, but also as an attorney when it comes to what's happening in Chicago specifically as it relates to ICE and the near about human rights violations that we're witnessing on the streets of Chicago and some of our surrounding suburbs?
Yeah, it's been so dismaying to see what's happening in Chicago. I don't view this as surprising or dismaying. I'm afraid that this is kind of a trial balloon for what could end up happening in other parts of the country. When you have somebody who's trying to concentrate power for himself, inevitably dissent becomes something that they need to stamp out. Because what they start doing is not popular, right? You start taking actions that stigmatize, that persecute certain minorities, and at first maybe people go along with it, but over time, it just becomes unpopular. And you've seen some of that shift in polling, even on Trump's immigration policies, right, where people who might have wanted to have some shift on border security are not happy with some of the cruelty in implementation. And the response of autocratic leaders to that kind of criticism to opposition is going to be to try to stamp it out and to make people afraid to speak out. And I think that's what we're seeing play out in Chicago and in other places. And I do worry that this is the beginning of worse things to come. We all have a basic right to freedom of peaceful assembly, to freedom of speech. And our government should be protecting those rights. not making us afraid when we exercise them. But things have been turned on their head. It's very impressive to see people standing up to that and going to court and continuing to exercise their rights peacefully. But this is probably going to be a long road ahead, and we are going to have to gear up for that. And again, that's why Defiance.org and efforts by so many people to stand up are so important, because we're all going to need to model and follow that example.
Right now, the thing that's happening, and you said this in part, Maria, is that dismantling systems that are in place. The other dismantling part, and Miles, you touched on this as well, is pulling us apart from one another and breaking down the community, breaking down the connectedness. Prior to you guys being on, we had Margaret Donovan, who's an attorney, and you guys probably know a lot about her and her work in this area. And she talked a little bit about, our legal systems are holding right now, and there's some wins that we've had there. So I want to ask you both this question. Miles, you've had the ire of the presidency turned directly at you. Maria, you, with your legal background, you've seen misuses of power or abuses of power by powerful people. Do you feel, or let me not ask a closed question, how do you feel about the statement that we have some wins and our courts are holding right now? What do you guys both see in that conversation? And Miles, why don't we start with you and then come back to you, Maria, given that you're the attorney in the conversation?
Well, look, I would say first and foremost that the decisions against this administration in the courts have been extraordinarily damning and very validating to all the people who spent years saying that a return of Donald Trump would result in a blizzard of illegality. And I say that because the courts have found dozens of his decisions already have defied the law and defied the Constitution. That's the good news. The courts are paying attention, and at least the lower courts are calling the balls and strikes. The bad news is that this administration is trying to run as many of these decisions as possible up to the Supreme Court by the end of the first year or partway into the second year. And this has been a strategy for a very long time. I was just talking with Maria yesterday. We were on another program, and I was talking about how in the first Trump administration, I remember a meeting I had with Stephen Miller on the second floor of the White House in his office in the West Wing. And he said, when we win a second term, it's going to be a shock and awe blitz against the American people. We've got a stack of executive orders, and we know we're going to get challenged in the courts, and we're going to try to run as many of these up to the Supreme Court as possible, because they believed the Supreme Court would either agree with the president or try to sidestep controversial decisions that hampered the president's ability to engage in this expansive view of executive power. And so far, I think we've seen that from the court. Now, as Margaret noted in the previous segment, there are some cautious reasons for optimism on the specific case of the deployment of troops. But I think by and large, the Roberts Court wants to sidestep difficult decisions and does not want to challenge the executive when it comes to issues of national security and public safety. They want to be deferential. And that's alarming, because this president wants to go all the way. He wants to go all the way by invoking the Insurrection Act, deploying the United States military, and enforcing domestic law, basically with his own pocket police. That's not an overstatement. That's what this president wanted to do. And I can remember conversations in the first term about the president wanting his own mercenary force because he wanted an unaccountable group of law enforcement that would only report directly to him. Now he's trying to cobble that together and to make that happen. So, I think the courts have helped hold the line, but we are one decision away from the president just deciding, well, if the courts don't go the way I want, I don't want to listen to them. And then we are truly in a full-blown constitutional crisis. And that's why it's so important to realize that the people themselves, as Thomas Jefferson said, are the last resort. We can't depend on unelected bureaucrats around the president to restrain his impulses like we did in the first term. We can't depend on the Congress, which has checked out of the equation. We can't even fully depend on the courts, which may hesitate to check Trump's power. In the end, it's going to be the people themselves that have to mobilize en masse to check this administration's power.
Maria.
Yeah, look, I agree with Miles. I think the courts have played a really important role when you're talking about the lower federal courts. And thank goodness, because they're being very brave. Many of these judges are receiving death threats. They've been, of course, criticized directly by the president, and it's a really tough environment. So we should be expressing huge support and appreciation for the lower court judges who are doing the right thing and upholding the rule of law wherever possible. But the Supreme Court has had a very troubling pattern of avoiding issues, unclear exactly why, or ruling in really problematic ways, like with the presidential immunity decision that they issued last year that has essentially made the president feel like he's above the law. And that's enabled a lot of what's happening, I think. But look, I think that what happens in other countries is very likely to be the same thing that happens here, which is the president is going to keep trying to chip away at the independence of other institutions. So he's tried to control Congress. So far, that's been very effective. He's turned them into a rubber stamp with a pretty narrow majority there. And he's trying to take over the courts, either through intimidation, by threatening to defy them, or gradually by putting his own appointees on the courts, like he just did with Emile Beauvais from his Department of Justice, who's now on the Third Circuit. So we can't count on the courts to save us, but absolutely, people can make our institutions work for us, and that's what we need to focus on, right? Yes, we need mass protests, but also we need to do this in a very targeted way. If we want to preserve and strengthen our democratic institutions, we actually need to use them. And this is why at Represent Us, the campaign we're launching now is called the Congressional Courage Campaign. And what we're trying to do is harness the energy of people who are out there eager to do something to make a difference and get them to focus it on their members of Congress.
Yeah.
Because even though these so many members of Congress are scared of the administration, are afraid that they'll be primaried and so on, ultimately, they also need to get reelected. And that means constituents have a lot of power.
Yep.
And we're already seeing some cracks in the armor. Yesterday, over the last couple of days, we've seen several Republicans join Democrats in trying to roll back some of the worst, the most extreme tariff examples, including in Brazil and Canada. And that's not something that you were seeing 2 months ago, right? It's a little bit of independence on an issue that has been a high priority for the president. So let's widen those cracks. Let's focus on getting enough members of Congress to stand up that others feel safe doing the same. And again, this is not about partisan politics. This is about standing up for basic democratic principles, including the separation of powers and Congress's own authority and duty to exert oversight of the executive branch.
And it's a great what you guys are doing in terms of both of your organizations, Defiance.org, Miles Taylor, and Represent Us, Maria, is precisely where we are in needing more and more organizations that are pulling people together during this incredibly awful, fractured time. We got to have you guys back to talk more about this because I know more people want to be able to chime in and hear more about what you guys are doing and how these organizations are going to be resources for organization and resources for bringing people to the table to have their voices heard and to have that impact on not only congressional leaders but also state leaders. So Maria, thanks for being with us this morning. Miles, thanks for being with us this morning. You guys have been great, and I know that there's a lot more for us to talk about, which means we got to get you scheduled to be back on Choose Views. Does that sound okay?
Amazing. Thank you, Richard.
That'd be great.
All right, guys. You guys have a great rest of the week. Thanks so much, and we'll talk with you real soon. Let's take a quick break, guys. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago, 103.5 FM and 1520 AM. From Warren County, North Carolina, I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Still struggling with gas, bloat, constipation, nausea, or diarrhea? Have you tried eliminating foods but felt no change? It's time to call the tummy whisperer, Renee Barish at Digestive Health Solutions. Renee uses targeted testing to reveal exactly what's happening in your gut. Gut bacteria plays a key role in all your body functions, from cardiovascular regulation to brain function. When the gut is imbalanced, you may experience symptoms that extend beyond the gut, such as anxiety, skin issues, poor sleep, or increased risk for disease. Digestive Health Solution uses advanced testing to identify harmful microbes and evaluate the overall balance of the gut ecosystem. Get insights into your health, digestion, and how your microbiome affects all aspects of your body. Stop suffering. Call Renee now at 847-207-2034 or visit thetummywhisperer.com. That number is 847-207-2034. Let's get you feeling better. The Tummy Whisperer.
This is a WCPT Veteran Minute. After working several odd jobs in New York City, Henry Johnson found his way into the National Guard during World War I. Johnson was assigned to the 369th Infantry Regiment, but the all-black unit was better known as the Harlem Hellfighters. The Hellfighters' first task was assisting the French Fourth Army. On May 15, 1918, Hellfighter Johnson noticed Germans attempting to break in. Johnson retreated to get backup from the French troops, noticing German soldiers were attempting to kidnap another Hellfighter. Despite standing at only 5'4", Johnson sprung into action. With only 3 bullets and a bolo knife, Johnson was able to kill 4 enemy soldiers and wounded 21 others, causing them to retreat, saving himself and his men. However, Johnson received a total of 21 injuries all over his body, including his left foot being shattered. Johnson was discharged, and his papers did not show his heroism or his injury, leaving him unable to receive any disability compensation, leaving Johnson penniless at the time of his death at age 36. Johnson's heroism went unnoticed for decades until President Barack Obama awarded him the Medal of Honor in 2015.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see mostly sunny skies here for today with a high into the upper 50s. Winds out of the north of 5 to 10 miles per hour, gusting as high as 20. Then for tonight, mostly cloudy skies develop a low near 43. Friday, skies become sunny, high 55 degrees. And Saturday, a slight chance for rain, cloudy, high around 52. Sunday, mostly sunny, high around 54. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 41.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
You're listening to Choose Views with Richard Chu.
Y'all, the coolest people are running for office this cycle. We have to talk about them. Like today, we have to talk about Demi Palecek, who is a National Guard member who is running for State House in Chicago. But first, we are legally required to watch this video of her on Newsmax talking about potential deployment of the National Guard. Oh my God.
The president has, floated out the idea that National Guard could very well come to the city. You're part of that group. So if he does that, what are you going to do?
So I'm going to start by saying I'm talking for myself on my behalf and not the National Guard or the DOJ. But I don't agree with it. A lot of our community is Hispanic. A lot of the National Guard is Hispanic, and we've used it as a tool to get more soldiers in the military. So why would we go after our own people?
Are you going to refuse to take that mission?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's a war crime against our own community.
And does that get you let go or discharged from the National Guard? If that's what you signed up to do, is to take orders.
So what I signed up to do was to take care of the nation, and my oath is to the people, not to dictators or fascists.
That is how you answer knucklehead questions. So what I did with us this morning in studio, Demi Palecek, thank you so much for sitting in with us this morning. And when I saw that clip, I thought, and I said to Henry and one of our producers, I said, "That's it right there. That's what has to be said." She spoke right back, didn't wait a minute, and more folks, all of us, and myself included, need to be willing to say those things in a moment when you get asked a question, and particularly when you're running for office. So, welcome to the show. And thanks for being with us. And let our listeners know what you're running for. I'll let you tell them rather than me tell them.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. And hi to all the listeners. Good morning. I am Demi Palecek. I'm running for 13th District State Representative.
Yeah, here in Illinois.
Here in Illinois, yeah. So it starts at Wrigleyville, goes up to Uptown, Andersonville, Edgewater.
Got it. So it's a big area.
It is a big area.
It's a big area geographically, and it's a big area population-wise. With a lot of economic influence and a lot of political influence here in the city of Chicago, and of course then for the greater state of Illinois. So talk a little bit about your background. I mean, we can't just skip over what you've done. And we've been fortunate today to have 3 guests that speak on something that they literally are qualified in. Prior to you, Miles and Maria, they're qualified in the space of understanding national security. Prior to that, Margaret Donovan is a former military member, been to Iraq, served, attorney. She's been there. So talk about your background and how that's so relevant to your running, but also to the moment that we're in.
Absolutely. A lot of people, when I talk to them, say that I've lived 1,000 lives and I'm only 34. So I'm originally from Southern Illinois. My mom is from Mexico and was undocumented most of her life. And she struggled with schizophrenia and bipolar. And my dad was a Vietnam War vet, and he struggled with alcoholism. And I remember being 14, 15, working next door at a restaurant by my house, washing dishes just to help my family, and being like, is this how life is going to be forever? And my friend, when I was in high school, wanted to join the military, and, friends go with each other everywhere. And somehow I was dragged along, and they're like, what are you going to do? And I had never thought about it, like, ever.
Yeah.
And I came home, and I went around to, friends, and I was like, I think I'm going to join the military. And everyone, I've never heard to this day my dad laugh that hard. And when people tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it. And obviously they were going to pay for school. They said I could travel the world. That was my pathway out of poverty. And so I did it. My first enlistment, I was active duty Air Force, and I was assaulted, and I told. So I actually ended up getting in trouble, and they helped him become a police officer on the civilian side. And when I got home and kind of regrouped, I'm like, I'm never going to let this happen to anyone else. So the smartest thing was to re-enlist in the Army National Guard and be over that. So I spent my career as a squeaky wheel over equal opportunity, helping with sexual harassment investigations, and until currently working with trans soldiers. And I don't know, I've just spent my entire life fighting for those who are oppressed. I'm very privileged for the color of my skin, and my last name is my dad's. And that is not how the rest of my family is. And seeing what's happening to our community, our neighbors, my family, it's disgusting.
Self-awareness is one of the things that as I was listening to you talk and describe, the earlier parts of your life and where you are now, you're very aware of who you are, where you come from, and why that matters. Right now, our federal government, specifically the Trump regime, is trying to remove. This is the thing that I don't talk about enough. I do every now and again with this sort of immigration craziness and all the things that are happening in this administration. Part of it, books and banning and all those things, is to take away people's history, people's understanding of where they came from and what whose shoulders they stand on. And even with your mom and dad's personal challenges, you still represent and stand on their shoulders because you know that they gave you a lot of things to be able to fight and to move forward. So talk a little bit about that, but also how you see what the federal administration is doing to take away humanity, take away that feeling of connectedness that we all thrive to have.
Yeah, as a young girl, I remember I wasn't allowed to have Taco Bell because my mom was like, they took from our people. And I was like, this is so annoying. My friends all have Taco Bell and I have no idea what to order there.
Right.
But now now I'm very much like that. I could never said in life that I'm like my mom, but so that was the first time ever. But I definitely understand.
Happened here, y'all.
But I definitely understand that. And, I grew up in Southern Illinois where my family told me to just say I was Italian because I was the Mexican. So if I'm the Mexican of my town, like imagine how that is. My mom lost so many jobs for a heavy accent and being darker skinned. And back then when you're little, you don't really understand. And I'm very grateful I was able to leave and culture myself. I've traveled the world under Pope Francis and not the military. I want to say the military, but they've only sent me to the worst places in the country and January 6th. But just a lot of education. And that's how I was able to, understand and love who I was. Because sometimes, I don't know if anyone has ever seen the movie Selena, but Selena battled with this, that, you're not enough for the Hispanics and you're not enough for the white people. So where do you fit? And that's kind of what I've grown to love, both sides. And, like as you said, they're getting rid of books so people can't culture themselves, so they can't love themselves. And when you don't love yourself is when you hate everyone else. And that's what I see. Republicans have the House. They have the presidency. They have everything. So why are you still so angry and coming after people? I don't just get a therapist. I don't get a.
It's true. I mean, that question is getting asked a lot on social media. You got, in terms of our federal government, they have the three branches of government on lock right now because numbers are numbers. It doesn't matter if it's 1 or if it's a 50. They still have the majority. And so all that's happening right now, and I've shifted my conversation. In my brain, I had to say, we can keep throwing darts at Donald Trump all day long. I mean, whether he got dropped on his head or not, or, to whatever extent his traumas were when he was younger, we're dealing with them now. But it's not him only. It's the entire GOP, federal, state, and local. Because if they can't stand up to this, then it's on them. Mm-hmm. And so you running for office here in Illinois, you have an area that you're running in an area, a district that is more, I don't know what the exact percentages are, but it's clearly going to lean more progressive or certainly middle on a bad day. But you're going to go to Springfield and be dealing with folks that are from other elected districts. And obviously Illinois is a blue state, blue city, Chicago, blue state, Illinois. How are you going to navigate those, kind of murky waters where you've got people that are on the other side of the aisle and they're not your colleagues, by the way, just so you don't use that. They're not your colleagues. If they're trying to hurt you, they're not your colleagues.
Right.
That's just a little bit from Uncle Richard. But the point is, how are you going to deal with that? How are you going to navigate when you're dealing with somebody that isn't favoring policy that you want to get in place?
I've noticed in the military is where I use this tactic a lot. You have to explain it like to a kid. You know what I mean? And I use the military card a lot on, you know what I mean? No one ever thinks that, the stereotype that I am in the military, that I've been in for 14 years, or that I was activated, or that I was a police officer, things like that. And so when I can pull that card, that's how we can bring each other in. Unfortunately, I'm very progressive. I think the military makes you progressive. It's the biggest socialist group we have in the country.
And that's counter to what so many people want to think about the military. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, in the military, I argue a lot. Again, I'm the squeaky wheel. But they're like, oh, you're a socialist. And I'm like, totally, babe. So are you. We all match. We're paid by the taxpayers. We all are getting fed. We're all getting health care. Isn't that amazing? Now imagine if we made it the whole country. Wow. Cool.
That's such a great amount of reality and sarcasm all rolled in, but it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big. I've never heard anybody, and I've been around for a minute, refer to the military, our U.S. military, Henry, as the biggest socialism experiment that we all know about.
Mm-hmm. And I love to say it's the biggest gay club ever too.
Come on.
It really is.
Talk to us.
So then, for them to repeal, go back to Don't Ask, Don't Tell, or get rid of all of our trans soldiers, it was a lot of you know what I mean? And they want to pretend that they're not gay. Everywhere we go, grinders blowing up. Be so serious. So then I really want more mental health and more therapists in the military, because then we could work through that patriarch trauma and just accept and love who you are.
So she's gone from being someone running for office, Henry, to the comedian, So, but, Demi, one of the things that I've come to admire about you and the work that you've been doing in this campaign is that you're relentless about what you believe in and what you feel, and then how that translates into something that you believe in. Share with our listeners why you think that that's important. And I'm gonna throw one more coat onto this. Younger voices, you said it, 34. And I mean, younger voices is all relative, in my opinion. There's some 77-year-old folks running for office like Janet Mills in Maine, who's a young voice from energy-wise, chronologically older. But talk about how that young voice, that young energy, that passion is so important right now, and why it's so important, and how it motivates you.
So I don't know if I fit anywhere in my Hispanic culture, and I also feel like that with the party right now as well. And I think that resonates with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I've worked with the party a long time, and I am grateful for what they have done. But at the same time, I also don't feel like I fit in there. And as progressive as I am, I don't feel like I fit in there either. And I feel like that just resonates with everyone right now. And my age, like, we've only been through trauma, I feel. I remember 9/11, and then I remember the tan suit. The tan suit was the worst thing we'd ever seen, which is crazy that no one's more upset about what's happening on that side. But,
See, I think part of the reason, I just had a brain moment. First of all, you're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm talking with Demi Palecek, who is running for the 13th District State Representative here in Illinois. What just happened is my brain went, so a lot of times when a person speaks to you about something, their experience, you can't connect to it because it wasn't your experience. So you're learning from them based on what they encountered. But you just said it. I mean, going back 20 years, you're 34. So if we go back 20 years and we go back 20 years in time, there's been a lot of craziness that's happened in your mid-teen years till now. So you've seen a lot of trauma and craziness during that period of time. So how's that influenced you not fitting in, but finding your way?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've always had people speak for us and on our behalf. But I feel like no one's ever asked us what we would like. Mm-hmm. They've just been like, don't you want a house? No, I don't want to take care of anything. I mean, I would love if people want a house, then that they could have a house. But you've made it so difficult that I'm scared to have a house now, and I feel like other generations have made it really hard and pulled up the ladder on us. Mm-hmm. And I think that they don't realize that. And, I feel a lot of people have never had to think about at the end of the month, am I going to be able to pay rent or am I going to be able to eat? And I've kind of been in that mode almost my entire life. I'm still working class. Mm-hmm. And, everyone makes fun of millennials that they aren't working. Every millennial I know has like 2 or 3 jobs and is like also like 3D printing things and like making T-shirts, like just trying to like enjoy a little bit of life right now.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. And so I just feel that, we need someone who actually knows what it's like. We need more organizers. We need more advocates. We need more working class people. Because for the longest time, we've had people speak for us that have no idea what it's actually like every single day.
I think that's the part that maybe, and thank you for answering the question that way, and not answering it in your way, is because I think a lot of times, and I just missed this myself, we don't ask. Sometimes we tell. We're all susceptible to that. None of us are immune to that. We tell rather than ask. So. I think that the appeal to where you are of you and where you're going with this race is it's about asking what people really want versus telling them what they should have. That's a great example, Demi, about the home. Some people don't want to own a home, but it's being forced on in this political conversation that we know that our young folks can't buy a home. Well, have you stopped to ask them if they want to own a home? So thank you for reminding us of that, to ask rather than to just tell.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing about kids. Everyone keeps forcing like the patriarch ideas on us. And it's like, I'd actually rather go travel, or I don't know, I have a dog and I have to take him to daycare. And that's overwhelming sometimes. I couldn't imagine 3 children. So parents out there, kudos, because that seems so scary to me. But, I think that we've pushed this idea of what we should be for so long that now, like us who are like, no, I don't want that. I just want to make pasta by myself tonight.
Mm-hmm.
We are left out of the conversation often.
And that's where you said earlier about not fitting in, because even in the progressive conversation, there's a lot of, I don't want to just label one group, but there's a lot of that thinking across the board that we should be putting on others what we did so that their lives are going to be, in some places, it'll fill in the void for what we didn't get done in our lives.
Right. And think of the aunt that you make fun of at Thanksgiving, who's like out with a fur coat enjoying her life and like having a martini. And you're like, God, she's so cool. Well, you know what I mean? Why are we making fun of her? She's the coolest person we know. I want to be her.
Yep. I know what you mean. Wow. Demi, I applaud you for that sort of literal talk about what people should be, how people should be trying to be, which is maybe more inquisitive and less, here's what you need to be doing because this is what I did. And the aunt example is a good one. My wife and I could definitely lean into that because we are the aunt and uncle with no children. And we love it because we get to spend time doing things for so many other people. But you also gave homage to those who have children and how much of a challenge that must be. Politically, right now, it's a hot environment. We know that on a national level, on a state, on a local level. What's going to be your through line? Like, okay, this is what I'm going to have to do to make sure that I get elected and that I'm able to then represent the people. What's going to, in your mind, maybe a better way of putting this is that the stuff that's going to get you across the finish line.
So I've run before. I ran for police district council, right, which a lot of people, often forget about or where that office is. But I wanted to prove that money shouldn't be in politics, which is very cute and naive, as we all know. But that's, that's what I would like. But so I didn't fundraise the first time. So with only $7,000, I still got 14,000 votes.
Wow.
So, my story resonates with my community. My work ethic does. And even when I wasn't elected the first time, I never left my community. Mutual aid is very important. As I said, my mom is schizophrenic. We don't talk. My dad is like 87. He doesn't really understand what's going on. I don't have family. So my family is the district. So when I see, my neighbors who need food or clothes or whatever the case may be, we're going to do it. And my area is very progressive and they love that as well. So, I have a bunch of people. Last night, we actually made Halloween treat bags for kids who are scared to go outside because of ice.
Yeah.
And I was sobbing for how many candy bags were at my door. I couldn't open my door. Everyone kept leaving candy bags at my door.
Yeah.
And so, my community sees that and all the work that I've done and that I actually truly care, that I'm actually truly working class. I'm just them.
Yeah.
That is kind of just outspoken and annoying, But my main goal I'm working on this month for the Path to Victory is fundraising. Okay. I am grassroots. Again, I'm working class. Some opponents can put in a lot of money. I cannot. So that's what I'm doing is fundraising heavily this month to prove that I am viable.
And just because, as we know, that folks can put a lot of money in doesn't mean that they're the best candidate. And I want to go back to something that you just said a moment ago that I don't want to skip by. You said it. You said that, it would be great to get money out of politics, but that's, it's kind of a wish list rather than a reality right now. I think it takes Citizens United through the Supreme Court for that to actually happen, or at least to be reined in. And we're not there yet. So we have to get the wins we can get. And I think that you've probably captured that from what I'm hearing, that you know that you got to make some adjustments. What you did before didn't work to the extent that it could have. But now you're going to embrace a little bit of that by fundraising and helping you get across the finish line because your ideas are better. And that you want to make sure that those ideas get brought on a state level, which, frankly, is the national conversation right now. How are you feeling about the state, not versus, but the state integration and national integration of messaging as we wrap up today?
Yeah, so my background is in marketing and communications. So I just feel like we've been failing at both for some time now. I think of the Safety Act, how, the right was able to use that against us and get ahead of us on marketing and just get this false narrative out, right? Mm-hmm. My hometown was one of the first for small towns to talk about litter boxes in high schools. If we just had like a little game plan of a marketing strategy there, we could have combated that, right?
Right.
So that's what I do now. I work with PACs or legislations who come to me and basically like, this isn't passing or this is getting negative press. What do we do to fix it? If it's housing, if it's gun reform, anything like that, like how do we get ahead of the game and fix this so we can all get everybody on the same page and get it passed, that it's actually helping working families.
Got it.
So I think that we need to do a heavy deep dive across the nation of how we're doing our marketing. And, the right has also pinned my degree as, what did they said it was like lesbian dance theory is my degree or something. And it's like, because you're scared of my degree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's useful and you guys have been using it against us this entire time. So.
Yeah, there's a part of me, Demi, that says that, you got to punch a bully in the mouth. And then if that doesn't work, punch him again. Him or her. I don't mean that literally, but to the extent that we have to get people's attention and they got to know that we're here and have fighters like you on the team as a way to kind of amplify and help with your fundraising or your finding out more about you. How can folks find you? How can folks get involved? How can they contribute?
On my website, it's demiforillinois.com. You can donate there. I would love if you want to read more of my policies and what I plan to do. I just love thinking outside of the box and being creative and how we can actually help working families. You'll never see my legislation or my ideas be like, wear red on Wednesday. I'm not going to do that. I want to be creative and resourceful and see how we can actually make change in people's lives. demiforillinois.com. Also, please follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is fun, very girl-coded. I also have a TikTok. Anything that anyone at the doors has told me to get on Threads or Blue Sky, I am on all of those as well. So Demi for Illinois. I have a couple of events coming. I am in the military, and so I do have a veteran event if anyone would like to come. It's in Uptown on November 12th, 6 to 8 at Tadler Post.
Okay.
And so that will be posted today on my Instagram and website as well. And yeah, we just do a ton of fun events. We did pup cups and paletas the other week to meet with a bunch of dogs. Sign up for my newsletter. It gives important stats of how many dogs I've pet, how many Celsius I've drank, and obviously where policy is going as well.
Demi, thank you so much for being with us this morning. It's a joy to have you, and I'm going to walk out of here with my energy kind of boosted because of her energy. Get with her, guys. Follow her. Find out how you can get involved. Because she's got some events coming up. Get to her website and all the rest. Demi, thanks for being with us this morning. Guys, we're going to wrap up the show today. As I say all the time, take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.
Molex LLC in Lisle, Illinois is seeking a project engineer to create 2D and 3D CAD files for use in analysis, quality, and manufacturing environments. Telecommuting is permitted up to 3 days per week. International and domestic travel required up to 10% each. The salary for this role is $123,635 per year. For a full list of benefits available, please visit cokebenefits.com. To apply, send resume to mlxjobs@cokeind.com. Please include job number 178935 in the subject line.
You've still got it, but your immune system weakens as you age, making it hard to fight the flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Sponsored by Pfizer.
AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. It's day 30 of the government shutdown, and food aid for more than 40 million Americans could expire by the end of the week. Democrats in Congress pushed for a temporary fix to the issue. Senate Majority Leader John Thune objected.